Telephone Town Hall with Congressman Adam Smith. During this event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. You can also sign up to receive the Congressman's newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time during this call. Again, press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to subscribe to the newsletter. With that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Smith. Congressman, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Dirk. I appreciate that. And good evening, everyone. I'll make a few opening remarks and then save as much time as possible for your questions. There's, hundreds of issues of importance without question. And I'm not going to hit them all. So I want to hit the ones that are most important to you. So we'll hear from you in just a moment. Couple things. We did pass all 12 appropriations bills. Finalized the last few today. There was one that I voted against, but by and large, it was a positive development in that it restored tens of billions of dollars in cuts to crucial programs. These are programs that were cut by the Trump administration over the course of the last year. Particularly, money was restored in healthcare around Medicaid, housing, education, transportation. So Congress actually asserted itself, and that's, as many of you have heard before, one of my big concerns is that President Trump is trying to delegitimize Congress as much as possible and concentrate power in the executive branch. So it is important that Congress does step forward and pass legislation, particularly legislation like this, that helped fund programs that had been cut. I was also able, working with my staff and the community, to get a number of community programs funded. A variety of different programs depending on the community, but transportation projects, some housing projects, other community projects for community centers and things like that. We were able to get some congressionally directed spending to help that out. Towards that end, as one budget cycle ends, another one begins. So we are starting the process for the FY, I guess that would be 27 budget now. So if you represent community organizations, you have projects that you'd like help funding, now is the time. Our deadline generally to submit our requests on those projects is around the 1st of March. So please reach out to us and do that. And then the overarching issue that I continue to work on is just the great economic inequality that we face and the difficulty that so many people are having paying their bills and keeping up between the wages they earned and the cost of living around particularly things like housing, energy, healthcare, education. We need to really focus on helping people and basically rebuild the American dream. Work hard, play by the rules, get ahead, right? That's becoming increasingly difficult. So housing, again, has continued to be a central focus. Nothing has gone up more in cost over the last several decades than housing in the 9th District and in many parts of the country. We need to build more housing. I've directed a number of dollars towards affordable housing projects. Also, I'm looking to drive dollars out to communities that reduce permitting and speed up the process of building housing and make the building of housing more affordable. So we need a lot more housing. Healthcare costs are also crucial. That's why the funding that I mentioned earlier to help restore some of those cuts is helpful. It's helpful. It does not offset the cuts that the Trump administration has made. We have seen the statistics as a result of not extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies. 1.4 million fewer people are now insured in this country as of the close of the enrollment period last week. And of those who did buy health care through the ACA, costs have gone up over 100%. There's also a concern that as we get into February and March and people actually have to start making the payments, a number of people will not be able to make those payments and they will lose health insurance. We need comprehensive health care reform. We need a universal access program that covers everybody in this country and to get costs under control. I'm going to continue to focus on that issue in particular as we move forward. Also want to highlight the importance of education. I am concerned that in the state of Washington, we've seen significant declines in enrollment in public schools. I think we need to respond to that. Public school is a backbone of any representative democracy and any society that has economic opportunity for all. I want to make sure we support that. And I've been highlighting and talking with people a story from last week about how the state of Mississippi has actually made significant improvements in the results of their education in reading and math in K-12. They have some of the highest scores in the country after having had some of the lowest. And in reading about what they really did was pretty simple. They set standards and they expected schools and students to meet them, but they also helped schools and students meet those standards. Now, they didn't spend a dramatic amount more money or reduce class size dramatically, but they also didn't offer up punitive tests with impossible to achieve objectives and then punish schools for not meeting them. They worked with schools to help them get there, but also really focused on reading and math. There's a whole lot of other things that now there's pressure being put on teachers to educate students about in civic affairs and life in general. But they get back to basics. We're going to teach you how to read, write, and communicate. And it really seemed to make a difference. I hope we can learn some of those lessons in our state and elsewhere to help get our students into a better place. Because I think part of the reason that we've seen that drop off in enrollment in public schools is I think we have seen a degradation in standards in our state. I think a lot of parents are wondering whether or not they're getting a decent education in those schools. So we want to work to improve that as well. Obviously, there's also a lot of concerning things going on from the Trump administration, at which point I could talk for a long time about a lot of different issues. But before I turn it over to you, I just want to highlight two. The number one biggest concern I have right now is the way the Trump administration is doing immigration enforcement, the way ICE and other agencies are out in our communities violating the basic rights of every American. They are not doing probable cause or due process. Just today or yesterday, I forget, ICE issued new rulings that said they are now going to go into people's homes without a warrant. All they will need is their own affirmation that they have somebody they're looking for. That is 100% a violation of the Fifth Amendment and due process rights. Fourth Amendment and due process rights. So we've seen it, obviously, the absolute appalling killing of Renee Good in Minneapolis, an unarmed woman who was no threat to the ICE agents. And we've seen many other examples of excessive uses of force and the violation of people's rights. I'm sure many of you saw the story of a 57-year-old U.S. citizen who was pulled from his home in Minneapolis in a bathrobe and boxer shorts by like 20 different armed ICE agents, streamed into their home, took him out, drove him around for 2 hours before determining that he wasn't who they were looking for and that he was in fact a U.S. citizen. That kind of violation of people's rights is a fundamental challenge to what this country is supposed to stand for, and we need to push back against it. That's the one appropriations bill that I voted against, and that would be funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Given the way that it is run, I can't support that. Now, let me be clear. I think we need immigration enforcement. I think all laws need to be enforced, including immigration laws. But what ICE is doing and what Trump is doing right now goes way beyond that. It is a violation of people's rights. I also believe that the president is simply setting up a paramilitary force at his command that enables him to violate the rights of people and push forward with his objectives, not the objectives of the country, our government, or the Constitution. So I'm very concerned about that. And on foreign policy and national security, we saw that President Trump gave a speech in Davos and has been acting in a variety of different ways towards other countries that is deeply concerning. Basically, he is trying to coerce other countries to do what he wants in a wide variety of different areas. And this is really problematic. Certainly, we've seen him proclaim that he is now the president of Venezuela, violating the sovereignty of that country. He has also laid claim to Canada and Panama, Colombia, Cuba, and as we all very much know, Greenland, currently controlled by Denmark. And I thought what you heard from the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Carney, was chilling in a way. He said, look, we set up this international rules-based system that gave the United States a great deal of power. We control the financial system. The dollar is the reserve currency for the world. We have an enormous amount of power. And what President Trump has decided is he's going to use that power to coerce and bully everybody. Adversaries, friends, partners, allies, doesn't matter. We're going to use our economic power to try to coerce people to do what we want. And what we want frequently is highly, highly questionable. We slapped a 50% tariff on India, a growing economic partner, because Trump didn't like the fact that Prime Minister Modi didn't give Trump credit for ending a war between India and Pakistan, which Trump didn't deserve credit for, by the way. He slapped a 50% tariff on Brazil because he didn't like the way Brazil was treating their former president, Bolsonaro. Those things don't help the American people. He's not trying to use America's coercive power to improve our lot. In fact, in the last year, we've seen the largest drop in manufacturing jobs we've seen in a very long time because of the way President Trump has used those tariffs. We've also seen costs go up for housing, as I referenced earlier, because of the tariffs on softwood lumber, aluminum, and steel. So he's using that for his own personal power, not to the benefit of the country. And in the process, undermining global peace and security by undermining the system of partnerships and alliances and rules-based international order that we had put in place. So, like I said, there's a lot more I could talk about, but those are two and some of my priorities going forward. I'll turn it back over to Dirk to moderate the questions. Look forward to your questions and comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And for everybody that's on the line with us, if you've got a question for your congressman, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And for our first question, we've got Thomas in Kent joining us. Thomas, you are live with Congressman Smith. What is your question?
Well, I'm interested as to why we've lost our primary care doctors that we've had for years. All of a sudden, we don't have them anymore because of budget cuts out of the UW Medical. And these doctors have been the ones that have kept us alive all these years, and all of a sudden they're gone.
Yeah,
and,
this is one of the.
We don't have primary cares anymore.
Yeah, go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead, sir. Sorry. Yeah,
Relied on these fabulous medical people.
Yeah,
and
look, and this is one of the major reforms that we need in our healthcare system. The reason that we're losing primary care doctors is because the current system just doesn't pay for primary care. It pays more for specialty care because we have fee-for-service medicine. We pay for quantity, not for quality. And primary care doctors just don't have the compensation rate from the insurance companies. So you're better off, if you're running a healthcare system, sending people in for x-rays and MRIs and CT scans, sending them to a specialist on one thing or another, because those services are compensated at a higher rate, which initially there was probably some thought, well, these are more specialized things, they're going to cost more. But what it did is it pushed us away from primary care. And also, because you're paid per visit, not on the amount of time, the biggest thing that primary care doctors do is they help with diagnosis. And I can tell you, had a number of different experiences. I went through a chronic pain, chronic anxiety problem that it took me forever to get it properly diagnosed, because they don't take the time. They get paid the same amount if they see you for 5 minutes or if they see you for an hour. So to make the healthcare system work, healthcare providers go the 5-minute route. They don't get good answers. They send you to places that A, don't make you better, and B, cost a lot of money to the system and undermining healthcare. So when I talked about,
I can tell you that my primary care doctor was 5 minutes from my house, and she gave me fabulous care and gave me fabulous time and worked with me, and all of a sudden she's gone.
Yeah.
And I got to go to Redmond now, and she lived right here in Kent.
Yeah, I've cycled through a number of primary care physicians myself for exactly that same reason. Now, I love primary care doctors. I want to support them more because they are the cornerstone of a good healthcare system. And the way to do that is to do a reform of our healthcare system so that we pay primary care physicians. You can set up a system where instead of paying per visit, you pay a flat fee each month to see a certain number of doctors and emphasize primary care. So yeah, in my vision for how we do comprehensive healthcare reform, two things right at the top.
Fabulous attention.
Yes, absolutely.
And now they're gone.
Two things at the top of the list: cover everybody, emphasize primary care. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's a really good insight on what we need to do with our healthcare system.
So don't forget, the congressman and his staff put out a very informative newsletter. You can get signed up to receive that simply by pressing *6 right now on your telephone keypad. Again, get signed up to receive the congressman's very informative newsletter. Please press *6 now. Let's get back to our next question. We've got Jason in Seattle on the line with us. Hi, Jason. You are live. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Oh, is this?
Hello.
Sorry.
You can go ahead
we
with your
got you.
question, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay. I am very curious to learn what the congressman intends to do to protect Washington families and children from ICE, and in the short term. And if he's willing to, to defund ICE or to do other measures in Congress to bring it to a standstill until ICE is out of our state.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I voted against funding ICE today. We'll see what happens with that bill in the Senate. But yes, in the current situation, I do not support funding ICE. And I think we need to speak out loudly. I think a lot of the protests that are being done are incredibly helpful. I saw something that I didn't think I would ever see today, and that was J.D. Vance trying to explain himself from his comment on, ICE has absolute immunity for anything they do. So I think the protests, the images, the speaking out, which I and millions of other people have done, are drawing attention to how awful what they're doing is. And again, I support immigration enforcement, but that's not what ICE is doing. And as long as they're doing it the way they are doing it, yeah, we should not support funding them at all. And we should draw attention to that and build more support across the country and begin to put pressure on the Republicans who continue to vote for this in Congress, that this is not what their constituents want. Look, Trump ran for office saying that he was going to go after the worst of the worst, that basically he was going to get people who had committed serious crimes and were not documented and tackle them. That's not what he has done. He has gone after people. He has detained citizens, legal permanent residents, not even people who are here without status. So the more attention we draw to that, the more pushback it comes. And you can see it in the polling numbers. President Trump had strong support on immigration when he came into office, and even for several months afterwards. He does not anymore, because the public doesn't support what this is doing, and we've got to build on that. So yeah, I'm happy to be as supportive as I can be in any way that people think would be helpful in that process.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess my concern is that as Democrats are in the minority right now, it's like what can Congress do? What can Democrats do specifically to disrupt this, kind of like fascist machine?
Yeah, no, I share that concern. And I think the thing that we can do is what I said, we've got to build support. We've got to build broader groups of people. But then even if we don't get the votes, the pressure can force a response. The other thing we can do, which we have done aggressively, is we've gone to the courts. President Trump has tried to do this in a couple of other places, in Chicago and Portland and Los Angeles, and the courts have ruled that he can't, that it's illegal, and it's been shut down. So that is one way to stop it right now. Similar lawsuits are working their way through Minneapolis, and judges have placed restrictions on what ICE can do. So that's another avenue that we need to pursue. But look, it is a frustrating situation. Believe me, I feel it every single day. I see what's happening, and I think fascist is an excellent way to describe it. And we need to build the support to be able to stop it. Shouldn't be happening. And it's frustrating that it is for 1 second, much less for as long as it's gone on.
Thank you.
If you have a question on your mind, please press *3 to enter the question queue to talk live on this call. Let's go to Seattle now. We've got Laura joining us on the line. And see if we can get Laura live here. Samantha, can you get Laura on for me, please?
Hello?
Laura, you're live on the call. Go ahead with your question for Congressman Smith.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am. How are you?
I'm okay. You know, everything is just so crazy, especially with RFK Jr. and his disastrous policies and rhetoric. It's got me really concerned about the outbreak of measles in neighboring states and other parts of the country. You know, extremely contagious and very dangerous to contract, and it puts vulnerable Washingtonians at risk. So, I was just wondering what your beliefs and policies are going to be with regards to disease control, especially because, you know, on that note, I believe that non-Americans are human beings, just as you and I are. And our foreign policy is putting many vulnerable people at risk, including Palestinians in Gaza who are being subjected to frigid temperatures, continued bombing since the supposed ceasefire that was brokered by Trump several months ago, you know, on top of the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been burned alive, ripped apart, bombed, systematically abused, and tortured during the 2-year genocide. Dozens have still been killed by Israel every week since this supposed ceasefire by American made munitions, many of which are made here by Boeing, by our firepower, and with our money. Unfortunately, we have voted to continue sending aid to Israel, and this is going to exacerbate the spread of disease, the death and destruction that we've seen in Gaza. So, as a ranking congressperson, I'm very much concerned as to your beliefs on foreign policy, why you aren't leading the charge to stop sending aid to Israel, to stop sending weapons to Israel, to stop sending, you know, just death and destruction
There's Yeah,
across Gaza.
There's a lot in there. Let me try to get to it as comprehensively as I can. First of all, what you originally talked about in terms of vaccines, and you asked what my views were on that, I would point out to you that there are actually measles cases in Snohomish County. So it's not other states; it's coming home to us as well. And I think when you look at what RFK Jr. has done, there's part of it that make sense. I mean, I don't think everything that our healthcare professionals have told us when he talks about the food supply and the impact that that's having on people's health and our diets and processed foods. But that's all fine. But his views on vaccines are placing us at risk. And there is no question about that. Vaccines have saved countless lives, but for some reason, he has it in his mind that vaccines are bad, and he's doing everything he can to undermine them. It's also worth noting that he and Trump are undermining scientific research, going after the CDC and NIH. You know, things that we've spent generations now building up to improve the health of Americans and to protect us from disease. So I think we need to push back on that. In terms of foreign policy, the ceasefire is beginning to hold better than it did a while ago. There have not been bombings in the last couple of weeks. Today or yesterday, I think they finally opened up all border crossings and are allowing people to come, you know, allowing humanitarian into the country. Way overdue, you know, and gosh, a year and a half ago, longer now, I called for a ceasefire and called for the increase in humanitarian aid and called for restricting arms to Israel until they put that ceasefire in place. And I think that needed to be done. The next most important step is we have to replace Hamas in leadership. And to do that, you have to have an alternative. And that alternative is coming together. I spoke with Representative J Street today, and also folks from the Friends Society. I forget exactly what the name is, but the Quakers and others. And we have seen an increase in humanitarian aid. And also there are Palestinians that are rising up to lead. They need our support. To the extent that Netanyahu stands in the way of that, we should roll over him and force that support. It is a problem that Hamas is still as much of a power as they are in the parts of Gaza that they control. We've seen them kill Palestinians who dare oppose them. We need to give support to those Palestinians so you can create that alternative and move forward with a peace plan that gives the Palestinians some kind of future and gets humanitarian aid in. As far as arms to Israel are concerned, the big problem, and I'm wrestling with this right now, is Israel is threatened by a lot of very problematic groups. Certainly Hamas has not 100% gone away, nor has Hezbollah, nor has Iran or the Houthis in Yemen. And throughout Israel's entire existence, they have faced this threat. There are a lot of people who don't think Israel was ever a legitimate state. And in various different forms and groups, they've tried over the course of 80 years to change that, basically to eliminate the state of Israel. I see the way Iran just murdered some 15, 20, the numbers keep going up, 15, 20,000 of their own citizens, destabilized the government in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq. And I want to help Israel defend themselves against Iran. But only if the ceasefire holds and only if we build towards that alternative to Hamas and support the Palestinian self-governance of that group. So that's what we're trying to do.
Can you measure the ceasefire holding when, again, Israel does continue to kill people, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank, which it illegally occupies, which is unceded land?
Yeah, that's a separate subject, which you hadn't brought up. That's not. I was focusing on Gaza. Yes.
Other in the region, bombing Iran again last year. We saw that they bombed Iran unprovoked, essentially.
Unprovoked. I'm not going to give you the unprovoked. I did not support the decision that we made to engage ourselves in that. But Iran has been funding Hezbollah and Hamas and raining rockets down on Israel on and off for decades. So I'm not going to give you the unprovoked. But a moment on the West Bank, yeah, absolutely. The West Bank has to be tied to this as well. If the ceasefire holds in Gaza, that doesn't really help if the war simply shifts to the West Bank. And Israel needs that. I have supported sanctioning the Israeli government and sanctioning their ministers directly for allowing the West Bank settlements and the violence there to continue. Yes, that does definitely need to be connected.
On the note of sanctions, I do believe.
And I got to get to somebody else here, so this will have to be the last thing, but go ahead.
Israel in any sort of meaningful way.
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
In the way that we sanction other nations which commit human rights abuses, we have not sanctioned the state of Israel in any meaningful way, in any way that affects their ability to stop killing people by the tens of thousands, again, with bombs that we make, with money that we give them.
Yeah, that is true. And again, the difference, as I said, I'm going to have to, sorry, I was going to answer. And then I do have to take some other calls. And again, the problem is that Israel is a legitimate country, in my opinion. I know a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people think they shouldn't have been created in the first place and don't have a right to exist. I disagree with that. And they are unquestionably under threat from, as I mentioned, very problematic groups. And we've seen the attacks that have come in, the missiles that came down from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, the attacks that Iran did launch directly against Israel. And they do have a right to defend themselves against that, even as I disagree with the way they are dealing with the Palestinians. That is the balance that I am trying to strike.
It is great to see so many people have connected into this live telephone town hall. If you've got a question that you would like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And also, take a minute right now and press *6 to get subscribed to the Congressman's very informative newsletter. Now, back to the Q&A. Off to Mercer Island we go. We've got Anthony on the line with us. Anthony, you are live with Congressman Smith. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi, sir. I appreciate your time and the amount of these town halls you hold. But my question is regarding the tariffs. If the Supreme Court ends up ruling against Trump on these tariffs, he's already come out and said that he is going to find other logic or reasons on which to reinstate these. Is there anything the Democrats can do to take back control of issuing tariffs so that we can put an end to this and I can get part of my livelihood back?
Yeah, no, I hear you. On our own, no, but we can certainly work. What we need to do, what Congress needs to do, is to block Trump's tariffs directly, to pass a law that would stop that. And I know, if it wasn't for the fear factor for Republicans, if you were to take a secret ballot of Republicans and give them the option of stopping these tariffs, we would easily have 2/3 of the House and the Senate agree with us to do just that. They are just afraid of crossing Trump. We had this very bizarre thing 2 weeks ago, a week ago maybe. We passed a couple of pieces of legislation at the end of last year unanimously that weren't, I forget the details of what they were. It was something to do with Florida, something to do with Colorado. Trump had a beef with one of the tribes in Florida that benefited from that, which was bipartisan. Everyone supported it. But that tribe had dared to question Trump setting up illegal detention facilities on their land for undocumented, for his detainees. So Trump, in a fit of pique, vetoed it. Colorado, he didn't like that Lauren Boebert had forced him to deal with the Epstein thing, so he vetoed that. And then all of these Republicans who had voted for this, no problem, switched their vote, and we were unable to override the veto just because they were afraid of Trump. So number one biggest thing we have to do is keep pushing our arguments so we get the Republicans out there to fear their constituents more than they fear Donald Trump. Some progress on that is being made. We got 17 Republicans to vote to extend the ACA tax credits, which was a lot more than we had before, but we got a lot of work to do as a practical matter, because you're right. What Trump does on the tariffs, and he does this on a lot of things, at various times throughout the history of Congress, we have passed laws to try to give some flexibility to the president in an emergency. By and large, Congress must act before this thing happens. But, if a set of extraordinary circumstances happen, the president can, act without Congress, but very narrow. Trump has taken those narrow things and blown the doors off of them and claimed that there are emergencies that simply don't exist. And the courts have slowed that. Now and I'm sorry, I haven't studied this recently, but there's a particular provision in the law that he's been relying on for his tariffs to declare an emergency. The Supreme Court, although they keep stalling, seems poised to say, no, that doesn't work. So now he's going to use a different one. And we'll have to go back through the entire court process, and Lord knows how long that will take. So the only way to stop the tariffs is to get Congress to vote. Now, the Senate did, a month ago, thereabouts, vote to repeal some of those tariffs. There is an appetite for this, and this is what we have to keep pushing. We've had some success with discharge petitions on Epstein and on the Affordable Care Act. So we're going to file a discharge petition to try and force that as well. But that's what we have to do. But we really also have to tell the story of how devastating these tariffs have been. And I've talked to so many people just like you who have a business. And usually these are small businesses, medium-sized at most, but they have certain component parts that they're dependent upon from other countries. And now the cost of those component parts have skyrocketed. And in many cases, it's put people completely out of business because their business doesn't pencil out anymore because of how the costs have gone up because of what Trump has done. We've also seen our economy really suffer. No jobs were added last year as businesses scrambled to deal with the unpredictable tariff environment that Trump was throwing at them. And also, by the way he is terrorizing the immigrant labor force, blocking our ability to get access to the workers that we need. So we need to tell that story, make that case, and get Congress to pass laws stopping the tariffs. Because again, I think most people recognize that. It's just that, they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, which is supposedly their excuse for criticizing Trump for whatever he does. The real Trump derangement syndrome is the complete unwillingness of the Republican Party to ever disagree with him. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I've been through Democrat and Republican presidents, and every single one of them has had Democrats that are willing to criticize the Democratic president, Republicans who are willing. Now what we have is a cult of personality more than a party. And we just need to smash that and change these policies.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, our next question, we've got Josh from Kent on the line. Josh, you're live on the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah. Hi, Congressman. Thank you for taking my call. Glad to hear your stance on ICE and that you did not approve that appropriations bill. I'm a little more sympathetic with Laura on the issue she raised. But anyway, getting to my point, earlier this month, Congressman, I think Robin Kelly, I believe, raised articles of impeachment against Secretary Kristi Noem, and I was hoping to see her name there. I didn't see it, so I was just wondering if you had any plan to sign on to those articles. If so, why, and if not, why not?
Sure. The only reason I haven't signed on yet is I haven't had a chance to look closely at what the articles are about. I feel that impeachment is an extreme step, that if you're going to take it, it better be extreme circumstances that are well explained and well understood. And keep in mind, I voted to impeach Donald Trump twice. I got nothing against doing it when it is absolutely necessary, but I want to understand and look at it. The Republicans impeached Mayorkas, I forget his first name, who was our Secretary of Homeland Security, for not enforcing the border. I don't think you should impeach people for a policy disagreement. I can hate the policy the person is doing, but that's not the same as an impeachable offense. So I've got to look and see exactly what are the specific impeachable offense. I am not a Kristi Noem fan by any stretch of the imagination, even before I found out that she killed her puppy. I don't like the way she is running ICE. I got to look and make sure it's impeachable. The other issue, and this is a political issue, and more than a policy issue, is, as I've mentioned several times throughout this call, the overarching goal here is to build enough support to stop Trump. Win back the House, win back the Senate, build a coalition of people who want a different future than the one Donald Trump is offering. And it's been a tough fight. And I know there are a lot of disagreements as to exactly what the Democratic Party has done wrong. There's widespread agreement that it's been a lot of things and very profound. But does impeachment advance that cause? If you're trying to convince people that Kristi Noem has a horrific immigration enforcement policy, that she's not following the law, that she is harming our communities, that is an easier argument to make than to convince people that she's committed impeachable offenses. So when you go the impeachment route, you raise the bar in terms of what you have to be able to convince people of to bring them over to your side. And that hurts that larger argument. The second problem with impeachment is that you lose. Unless we have 67 senators who are willing to convict, you lose. And it's a weird thing that I noticed, because I've been through 3 impeachments in my time in Congress, back when they impeached Bill Clinton, and now the 2 impeachments against Trump. And in all 3 instances, and just to be 100% clear, what they impeached Bill Clinton for was patently ridiculous. I do understand that. But in all 3 instances, when we got to the Senate, and first Clinton and then Trump twice were, acquitted, their popularity went up. They were deemed to have, quote, won. Now, personally, if you had told me that back in 1997 or 98, when the first one went down, I would have thought you were insane. How is it a positive for a president to be impeached in the first place by the House? And then, so he didn't get convicted because a few of his party stayed loyal to him. I wouldn't have seen that coming, but it is a phenomenon. Basically, he got acquitted, so maybe this was just overblown. So I am worried that if we walk down the impeachment road in too many places, we make our overall task of success more difficult, and we don't actually remove them from office. Now, depending on the circumstances, if we did it right, maybe that could be a pressure point to force a policy change or to force attention on an issue that helps us win. It just hasn't played out that way to date. So I want to study this carefully and understand what's going on, even as, again, emphasize, 100% disagree with the job Kristi Noem is doing, and I think she has. I'd have to look. I haven't seen what the exact charges were. I would be surprised if she hasn't committed something that constitutes a crime. High crimes and misdemeanors, I don't know. I don't think the founders knew exactly what that meant. Well, certainly she has violated the rights of Americans, violated the law in a number of cases. Just to give one example. Sorry, I should have grabbed a glass of water here before I started this. She was ordered by the court not to let a plane load of people she was deporting go to El Salvador, ignored the court and let it go anyway. That's pretty close to impeachable. But those are all the things that I'm trying to balance and reaching the decision as to how to go forward on that issue. Again, laser-like focus. I want to win. I want to get back control of this country and weaken Trump's power in any way we can.
All right. Now we've got a Facebook question from Bart, who writes, as we raise the ICE issue, please consider the huge problems with lack of due process in immigration courts and the depressingly long wait times for visas and confounding stoppages and travel bans hurting so many people, including Americans.
Yeah, thank you. That's something I should have brought up. Yes, there is a lot of focus, as well there should be, on Donald Trump's paramilitary force that he has put together to go around and violate the rights of Americans in the name of deporting undocumented immigrants. There's a lot of focus, and there should be. But what Trump is doing is a far more comprehensive attack on immigration, period, on all those issues that you just outlined in that Facebook question. Any visa you want to get is being made more difficult. There's countries that have travel that have travel, well, in some cases travel bans, but also immigration bans for various different types of visa. He has pulled special protective status from a number of different countries. And beyond all that, even if you can find that narrow little category within Trump world that allows you to apply for a visa of some kind to be an immigrant, they're not processing them. The DOJ process fired a whole bunch of people, and then they're slow walking absolutely everything so that we are undercutting the ability of immigrants to get into this country. And please understand something. Immigration is one of the great strengths of this country. I was in China recently, talking about a wide variety of issues, but, talking about sort of what advantages does China have over us? What advantages do we have over them? And there was a general consensus, the Chinese had been worried about the three great advantages that America has. And one of them was that people want to come here. We can draw from all across the world talented, hardworking people who want to come to our country and build better lives for them. And that has been one of the things that has sustained us for 250 years. Trump is killing it. And not just by terrorizing the immigrant community here domestically, by blocking the ability of immigrants to get into this country in precisely the way that it was described. Just out of curiosity, just to finish the thought there, the other two things were we have a system of partners and alliances that China didn't have. Well, Trump's doing a pretty good job of detonating that as well. And then the third one was our research. In places like the CDC and NIH and our research universities, we had that great strength. Well, Trump is also gutting that as well. And there was, I forget, somebody does a publication of the top 10 research universities in the world. And as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, 7 of the 10 were American. Now, 7 of the 10 are Chinese, and we have one that I think is 9th. So we are undercutting the advantages that have helped our country, prosper and grow. And certainly immigration is the one that Trump is attacking the most aggressively.
So as a quick reminder, if you've got a question you'd like to ask, please press *3 to enter the question queue. And also take a moment during this live event, press *6 to get subscribed to the Congressman's very informative e-newsletter. Now, back into the Q&A. Got Gary and Renton on the line with us. Gary, welcome to the call. You're live with Congressman Smith. What's on your mind? Hello, Gary.
Hello, this is his wife, Sally.
Hey, Sally, welcome to the call. Go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you. So, I'm concerned about the housing crisis for young people. And I know that we're trying to get affordable housing, but I feel there's more facets than just that. I'm a CPA, and I see that there are young people that are so discouraged that they are actually have given up on a dream of having a home, and instead are buying expensive cars to make themselves feel like they're making some progress, which in essence puts them in a lot of debt. I would like to see a program that would help young people take positive steps towards saving for that down payment, saving for a home. And it could take years, but if we start working on that, changing that mindset, and we also are working towards getting affordable housing, when that comes into place, young people would be ready with the resources they're going to need to take that first step. And I haven't heard anything about that. Is there something in work to help that change that?
Yeah, not as much as there should be. There are a wide variety of financial literacy programs. I know certainly K-12 does that. DECA, I think, is I've went and visited their centers actually in my district down in Auburn, and they bring in students from various schools and sort of show them, here's what it's like to set up a business, here's what it's like to save money and do. So there's a little bit of that. Also, I know there are a lot of really good community-based organizations that, well, in many cases they'll cater to particular immigrant populations, the Somali community, the Congolese community, Ethiopian, and others, where they do that. They help people, with financial literacy, with figuring out what do you want to do, how do you save money, how do you get there. But there's nothing sort of comprehensive on the government level. But your question also gets to the core of what is really ailing. Well, one of the big things that's ailing America, and that is the general feeling that the American dream is dead. And what's the American dream mean? Basically, again, work hard, play by the rules, get ahead. And I think of the two sort of basic examples. One, what my father did, and then what I did. My father never went to college, high school education, joined the Navy, got out, bummed around for a few years, and eventually got a job with Capital Airlines at the time here in Washington, D.C., which was eventually bought by United, where he worked for his entire life, eventually finding his way out to SeaTac. And basically he was just willing to work hard. That was it. High school education, worked hard, and was able to buy a house, raise 3 kids on that one income. And, so that was one. The second was what I did, which was, go to college. And college at the time wasn't easy. I worked from the time I was 11 years old, worked for UPS when I was in college, loading trucks, but I could do it, and I came out with, I think, $16,000 in debt. So relatively manageable. And then you could parlay that into a job and into a middle-class existence. And now that is not working out. And part of it is, well, you can look at the pay issue. If you look at what the average person is making at SeaTac Airport now compared to what my father and his coworkers were making out there 40 years ago now, it's not kept up with inflation. And just the wages haven't gone up. A lot of it has, gone more to shareholders and away from workers in a way that has undermined the buying power of the working class. But then the second piece is everything is so much more expensive. I'll get to housing in a minute, but higher ed. I got 7 years of education. I don't want to walk through the whole thing, but I got a 4-year degree from Fordham University and a law degree from the University of Washington. And I paid tuition, and that was from 83 to 1990. My total tuition was $31,000 for those 7 years. That number is now well over 400, pushing 500,000. So that's putting pressure. And then housing. It is a lot more expensive to rent or buy a house right now, and is undermining people's confidence. Now, I will agree with you that part of what we need to do is get people to say, no, it can still be done. How can we help you get there in terms of financial planning, saving money, don't spend the money? And it's true, young people have a lot more economic pressures. I wasn't paying a monthly charge for a cell phone because they didn't exist, and a whole lot of other things. But overall, I will come back to where I started, or not started, but one of my early comments in my opening remarks. Housing needs to be more affordable. It's the number one biggest pressure point. And there's only one way I can think of to make housing more affordable: build more of it, all of it. Now, I've mentioned affordable housing, but just housing in general. It's a basic supply and demand problem. And I don't have the statistics at my fingertips now. But if you look at the numbers on this, you look at the number of housing that experts figure that we're going to need to accommodate the population, we are way short of having built that and way short of having the plans to build what is necessary going forward. I think it's one of the best things we could do to revive the American dream is build enough housing so that it can become more affordable for people.
I agree.
Yeah, and I thank you for your attention to that issue. But also, and I thank you for pointing out that part of it is you do have to plan. I mean, I'm not going to go there. I walked 2 miles to school and uphill in the snow both ways, sort of speech. But my wife and I were pretty frugal in terms of what we spend money on, what we buy, and tried to save up and make sure that we go forward. And that has to be part of it is the financial literacy piece that you mentioned.
All right, our next caller, we've got Matthew in Renton. Matthew, you're live with Congressman Smith. What's on your mind?
Yeah, corporate money in politics seems to shift power that should be in the hands of the people to corporations. What's your take on Citizens United and the possibilities for repealing it?
I think we absolutely need to, and I think we should push the issue because that's the big problem. And I know everybody focuses on what individual candidates raise, but actually, I forget, back in the 70s, we passed a law that placed pretty strict limits on what PACs can give to campaigns. $5,000 an election. That's all any one PAC can give to any one campaign. But what Citizens United did is it repealed McCain-Feingold, which allowed for unlimited independent expenditures, which means that these groups can come in and they can influence. They don't give directly to the candidate. They spend on one side or the other an unlimited amount of money that in many cases is not transparent. You don't know who's spending the money or where it's coming from. One particularly problematic example is the crypto industry, which does not want to be regulated. So they drop millions of dollars into campaigns on one side or the other to support candidates who don't want to regulate crypto. And nobody knows where that money's coming from. As well, but it's completely unregulated. Now, I know Citizens United is a Supreme Court decision. So it's the settled law. Well, the Supreme Court changes its mind from time to time. They certainly did that here recently in Roe versus Wade, but in a more famous, to my mind anyway, more positive example, Plessy versus Ferguson, which allowed for, quote, separate but equal treatment. It allowed Jim Crow and racism to go forward until the Supreme Court changed its mind in Brown versus the Board of Education in the 1950s. Similarly, the courts for a long time, we had passed laws back in the early part of the 20th century to try to protect child labor, to the Fair Labor Standards Act, basically to protect workers in a variety of different ways. And the Supreme Court came up with something called the right to contract and said, now these laws are a violation of the right to contract. They're not allowed. But the Great Depression hit, pressure mounted, they changed their mind and they allowed those laws to pass. And the child labor laws were passed and the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed. I think we have to do a full court press to pass campaign finance laws and send it up to the court and challenge it and push it and try and change that. Because that outside money really takes control of politics away from, as you said, the people, but also to some degree, even away from the candidates. Because they're whatever money they raise, you can, and believe me, raising money is difficult. I mean, you can go out and raise $600,000-$700,000, over the course of a year, and then somebody with a big checkbook comes in and drops a $10 million campaign against you, and it's like you never even did anything. I think it undermines, candidates really having ownership of their own campaigns, and the voters being able to fairly evaluate, well, who is this person? What do they stand for? So I'm with you. And if I could wipe out Citizens United and bring back McCain-Feingold, I would, and I will do everything in my power to try and make that happen.
Let's try and sneak in one last question in the time we have remaining. And that honor goes to Carrie in Renton. Carrie, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, thank you for your time. My question is with regard to today's news about that Board of Peace document that were signed and obligation of the U.S. And I was just curious to know what the process is for addressing what exactly we're actually going to be obligated to pay, and whether or not this is something that has already been talked about in Congress before he was there signing something that I had not
No,
heard anything about.
no, this is purely a creation of Donald Trump. I don't even know where the $1 billion fee for membership is going. Nobody does. Trump has not said, is it $1 billion to pay to the U.S. Treasury based on what? I mean, why do people have to pay $1 billion to us for a board of peace, and what's he going to do with the money? And my real concern is, the 20-point peace plan that we are trying to implement in Gaza and Israel and the West Bank. Is this going to help that, or is this going to undermine that? I mean, if you take what I guess 19 countries joined today, so that's theoretically $19 billion. I don't know if they all paid. You want to take $19 billion and rebuild Gaza? Cool. That would be awesome. That would be a good thing to do. We don't have any idea what Trump's planning on doing with this. And look, and this is, I was going to say a good place to close. I don't know if it's a good place to close, but it's a good summary point to make. Understand that what Trump is doing, forget the individual policy, whether it's terrorizing immigrants or, threatening Canada and Greenland. At the end of the day, what he's really trying to do is end our constitutional republic in favor of an autocratic government that he controls, so that he is unconstrained by Congress, unconstrained by the courts, unconstrained by the law or the Constitution, and also unconstrained by any international agreement that we have entered into. The Board of Peace is stepping in where, the UN and a lot of other international agencies have been in the past. And that's what's so terrifying about this, is it is a fundamental threat to the concept of a Republican form of government. Where people have a say, and we are not a nation of individuals. We are a nation of laws and rules and norms and institutions that we follow and obey. He's trying to blow up as many of those as he can to concentrate more power in his hands. And that's what I think the Board of Peace is about. Remember, he's the chairman of the Board of Peace. And theoretically, we'll be collecting all of those checks. So whether you're pushing back on that, or you're pushing back on what ICE is doing, or the way he's using the Justice Department to allow his supporters to commit crimes with impunity and target his political adversaries, even if they haven't committed crimes, whatever piece of it is that is in the news or on your mind in a given moment, don't lose track of how connected it is and what a profound threat it is to our country. We need to keep working against that. And I guess the final thing I would say is, even if we are successful in that, we got a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, and you all have done a great job of bringing them up. Internationally, there is a lot of instability and war that threatens global stability and peace and is leading to countless suffering. Domestically, we have all the economic challenges that you raised. We need to get after those things. We shouldn't be having to deal with the autocratic tendencies of Donald Trump on top of how do we deal with healthcare? How do we deal with education? How do we deal with housing? Those are problems that should demand our full attention. So we got to do both. And that's what I'm trying to do every day. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Reassurance too that he can't commit us to something without it actually going through Congress, hopefully.
Yeah,
that was kind of my concern.
He may well try. He certainly committed us to regime change in Venezuela and to controlling Venezuelan oil without Congress's permission. So, yeah, we have to try and stand up and make sure that doesn't happen. But he will try.
So,
thank you all
very
much.
Yes, sir. I was just about to call on you for some closing thoughts, please.
Sure. I think those are my closing thoughts, except to say thank you to Dirk, first of all, for moderating. You do this frequently and do a great job. I appreciate that. And thanks for everyone who participated this evening. I will try to do these frequently, as it's a really good way for me to hear from my constituents, get a large group at one time. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the evening and the weekend. Good night.
To stay up to date with the Congressman's work, please follow him on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle @RepAdamSmith. Also follow him on Blue Sky at adamsmith.house.gov. If you'd like to subscribe to his e-newsletter at this point in the event, simply stay on the line and leave us your name and email address after the tone. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a great night. This concludes our call. Goodbye.